putting together a team.
The others like me.
No. Something darker.
Hey everybody, it's Hannah Saulic, the head of video here at CinemaBlend, with Sean O'Connell, our managing editor and author of the upcoming release of Snyder Cut book, and we have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about today, Sean.
Well, specifically because we're going to dive into the Knightmare sequence, and that has triggered a bit. So we were going down an avenue, and then Hannah and I reversed course and shifted gears to the Knightmare sequence because we got to see, and I'm going to assume you're going to put it up here right now.
Oh, yeah.
A brand new photo of Jared Leto from the additional photography as the Joker in the Knightmare scene. So let's get into all the reasons why this is exciting and why this this new addition to the cast is important for everybody to know about.
Yes. So do you want to start, and for diehard Snyder fans, maybe you guys can skip to the next section of this video. I'll put timestamps in the description. But Sean, can you just kind of give like a broad overview of like what is the Knightmare timeline? Because we know from BVS it's kind of like this post-apocalyptic future where Darkseid has taken over. There's more to it though, I know.
There is, because it's a glimpse into what could or will happen should Darkseid and the forces of Apocalypse come to Earth and succeed, essentially. So there was writing on the side of concept art that Jim Lee did, where he signified that it was taking place 5 years after the events of Zack Snyder's Justice League. So at least we have a time frame of when and where it kind of would be. And we do know that there's a Flash from the future who comes back and tries to talk to Bruce while Bruce is in his Batcave. So there's a lot of indication about that, that this takes place a few years down the road when it seems like the League has lost. And we only had the BVS Knightmare sequence to rely on to talk about, like, well, what had happened in this time frame? Well, clearly Superman had gone dark, theoretically under the control of the anti-life equation, which is something that Darkseid uses in order to control people. He even put together a little minion of soldiers, because if you go back and rewatch the BVS Knightmare sequence, you know that Batman is leading a bit of a resistance.
Did you get it?
He thought he was getting his hands on some kryptonite, but then he got betrayed.
I'm sorry.
And instead it turned out to be Superman and his people who were sort of like mimicking Superman's look, and they had the Superman patch, and they were clearly trying to stop Batman. So in this Knightmare sequence, we didn't get a look at Darkseid, but we got to look at the parademons and the fact that they're sort of fighting on behalf of Darkseid, and it clearly is pitting Batman against Superman, but we needed another look at it to sort of get an idea of how sprawling these repercussions are, and we expected to get it in Justice League, which leads to all the things that we're expecting to see in the 4-hour cut.
So what is the larger significance of the Knightmare timeline? Is that supposed to be alluding to that kind of 5-film arc that Zack Snyder had, where he wanted Darkseid to kill Lois Lane and all that, or is that something completely different?
Yeah, definitely. When you think about it, it's really revolutionary in the way that had Zack been able to follow along his timeline of films, this is one of the first times that you're ever seeing a filmmaker tease the power of a villain that you won't get to meet until a little bit down the line by showing how bad it would be if he triumphs. You're looking at an Earth that has been decimated by Darkseid, and you're getting it in a movie that hasn't even really introduced the complete concept of the Justice League. So it's Zack saying to his audience, this is how far in advance I have planned that I can actually give you a glimpse of how bad it's going to get if the League is not able to get put together. And then even the way that you sort of look at some of the hints that we get in the Justice League trailer, you're seeing such things as the complete decimation of the Hall of Justice, which again, at that point, hadn't even been formed yet. You get indications that key Justice League members like Aquaman and Wonder Woman are deceased. And we have some confirmation about some other characters who are going to show up in the Knightmare sequence. So they have at least survived in this post-apocalyptic world, and it'll make sense because they feel like the type of characters who, if the world were to go to shit, these are the ones who would still be thriving. And we'll get to them in a minute. But it also reflects just how much that Batman is a overly paranoid dude.
What does that mean?
His nightmare is that they lose and all of this happens and it comes to fruition. So because of the way that they transitioned us into it in BVS, I'm really curious how we're going to get into the Knightmare in Justice League, and especially the longer cut of Justice League. Is it still going to be a Bruce-driven Knightmare? We've heard indications of maybe Cyborg going into the Mother Box, and getting into the Knightmare sequence that way. Maybe there's multiple Knightmare sequences in Justice League, especially since it's a 4-hour cut. So that's a lot of questions we kind of need to answer.
I have a couple questions too. So I want to just go back to what you were saying about it's a really interesting way for Zack to kind of show you the threat of Darkseid without you ever having met Darkseid. I think it's a really interesting way to like raise the stakes too. Because so much of, I think, what was the huge problem with the theatrical cut of Justice League is like you didn't really get the sense that like Steppenwolf was a huge threat.
Why does everyone keep telling me that?
You flew too close to the sun. Now look at you.
So I think the Knightmare sequence is a really cool way to raise those stakes and give that context. But what I'm confused about is that actually, like, are we supposed to interpret the Knightmare scene as the future or just like a dream sequence of what could happen? Like, are these real events that are like in the timeline of the Snyder story, or like we don't know?
That's a great question. I think it's we don't know.
Okay.
I think it's a dream sequence of what potentially could come.
Okay.
But the
sense.
thing that crosses over on it is when Bruce wakes up out of the nightmare, at the moment when Superman sort of crushes in Batman's chest, he's awake and interacting with Flash, right? Like, so that implies that it's possible that it's happening, kind of thing. And we do know that like Flash is going to go back through time and communicate with Bruce using time travel to tell him that Lois is the key.
Lois! Lois!
She's the key!
So that does happen, you know? So it's like there's a weird blur line between like, yes, it feels a little bit like a dream scenario that's setting up how bad things could possibly get, but I also do think it's hinting at things that have happened or are going to happen. But then you get into like alternate timelines, and if one thing shifts, then you don't get to that reality. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go with that.
So it's almost kind of like a premonition of sorts.
Yeah, I think
Ish.
so. If only because, like, even in BVS, like, what kind of power does Bruce have at that point to even know the extent of all the stuff that could potentially be coming?
You don't know me.
I think it's a really revolutionary way for Zack to tease out, this is how far in advance I've planned. You know, it's Zack sort of thinking ahead and Zack thinking big picture. But there's a reason why, you know, and I'll stand by this, like the Knightmare sequence can be very confusing for really casual audiences who are watching it for the first time. Because you're in present day, you're in a Batman-Superman conflict movie, and then all of a sudden you get catapulted into this desert Batman sequence where he's fighting Superman soldiers, and it's like, what the f- is going on? What is going on here? Kind of thing. It takes multiple views before you start to really wrap your brain around what's happening. So,
but I bet in rewatches, like, you know, Zack thinking big picture, like you were saying, like that's going to be really cool to see, you know, if you're like studying this in hindsight kind of a thing. But
especially the one we're going to get coming up, because you start to think about the fact that it's a distant future, and if it's Jim Lee is right and it's 5 years ahead, that explains how different Joker looks. Like, he's not the Suicide Squad Joker.
Thank God.
And got the long hair, and his tattoos are kind of gone, that's a little odd. I wonder why he took his tattoos off.
We don't know what state he's in. Careful.
So we know that Zack did not originally have Jared Leto's Joker in his cut back in 2017 when he filmed. This was something that he told Vanity Fair, you know, when HBO Max gave him the opportunity to really finish his vision. He said, you know what, this would be really cool to add. I don't have a problem with that. Some people might, but I don't. I think that's great.
You're gonna be my friend.
So I just want to kind of get your first reactions to the Joker picture, because last week, or was that 2 weeks ago, when we saw the Joker card with his face blurred, you said you really wanted to see his face unblurred, and I was like, no, save that for the movie.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts?
I saw some people complaining that like, hey, now you should save this for the movie. And I get that. I'm really glad to have seen it. And I think it's really cool because I kind of understand how, if Zack back in 2017 wanted to introduce a Joker 5 years down the line in the Knightmare sequence, it would be so drastic to what David Ayer was about to just roll out in Suicide Squad that the studio at that point was probably like, you can't do that. And these are some of the battles that I think Zack would lose in trying to get his cut into the theaters if 2017 played out normally. You know, he would have had to say like, okay, fine, I'm not going to bring Jared Leto's Joker in because it's going to mess up what you guys are trying to do over there. And I'll think big picture and everybody will play a happy game. But now he's able to do it. You know, now he can say,
he doesn't have
okay,
to compromise.
Cool. Exactly. And so let's get to what this Joker looks like. So this Joker, you have to assume, has been living in this post-apocalyptic world that has been decimated by Darkseid. And Joker, again, is one of those characters that, like I said earlier, feels like somebody who would just sort of survive, right? Because he is wildly unpredictable, kind of like a cockroach. They last forever. But also there's been some commentary that I kind of like to believe, whether it's true or not, that because Darkseid uses this anti-life equation to essentially strip away all of the identity and personality that makes you an individual, that Joker is such a sociopath that the anti-life equation doesn't work on him. He's literally immune to it because all of the things that it does to take away your feelings, and that's why Superman is converted, because Superman loses Lois and it literally converts him over to a dark side.
She was my world, and you took her from me.
If you try to take things away from the Joker, he's just like, I don't care,
That's right.
It doesn't affect him in any way, shape, or form. So that's why he's able to sort of run rampant. And I kind of want to see like what he would do. Like, people have talked about whether he is Arkham Asylum type Joker, where he's running a criminal organization because he's such a madman, and whoever.
That's what I was going to ask, because
thing.
like, where do you think he is in that picture? It looks like a cell of some sort.
It really does. And we were having a conversation on another podcast where what if those blank walls are blank for a reason, because they're going to CGI add in cells and that he's in Arkham. Like, he's holding down the fort in Arkham, and Zack is going to digitally add in like this roster of, Batman criminals. And here you have Batman coming down a hallway to come face to face with Joker. But on either side of him is like every criminal he's ever faced kind of thing.
I get it.
But I would love to think that Joker is camped out in Arkham in this bizarro Knightmare future sequence. So that just sounds incredibly cool to me.
Okay, so I'm going to read what... because Zack did give some details about what we can expect from Joker, and he mentioned that it's going to be the first time that Batman and Joker talk in the DCEU, which is very exciting. He said, "It's Joker analyzing Batman about who he is and what he is. That's the thing I also felt like fans deserved from the DC universe. That is to say, the Jared Leto Joker and the Ben Affleck Batman, they never really got together. It seemed uncool to me that we would make it all the way through this incarnation of Batman and Joker without seeing them come together." And then Vanity Fair in their article describes Joker's role as like the ghost of Christmas yet to come, supplying motivation through terror. So that's kind of the role that this Joker sequence will fulfill.
So one of the other scenes that people point to, and maybe you can cut to some footage of it, is Christian Bale and Heath Ledger in the interrogation room.
You wanted me. Here I am.
And those two meeting for the very first time and
I
having a
love
conversation.
that scene.
You complete me.
That scene is tremendous, but it's those two meeting for the very first time. Like, one of the things that's really intriguing about this is that the Batman that Ben Affleck plays and the Jared Leto Joker, through design of this universe, have a long history together. And that Joker has done a number of things to really screw with Batman, and Batman has done a number of things to screw with him. So you can explore that material through dialogue in ways that we've never seen on screen before.
Yeah.
And Zack's right when he tells Vanity Fair, because we got a brief scene with them together in Suicide Squad, but it was more of an action shot.
You think that's your ruining date night?
So I cannot wait. And one of the questions that I asked on social media, to which we don't know the answer yet, is who wrote the dialogue that they're going to get to share? Like, did Chris Terrio come back, and write specific scenes for this? Did Zack just handle the writing? Like, I think this is really pivotal dialogue. Not that it's going to move the plot forward in any way, shape, or form, but this is the type of character development that we've been saying we're going to get a whole lot more of in the 4-hour cut of Justice League. And seeing those two interact based on the history that they have in this version of the DCU, that's what's so tantalizing.
Yeah, and I think it'll give Ben Affleck's Batman a chance to really do some work, because up until now we haven't really seen him in that much of a complicated place, aside from some of the stuff in BVS, but I don't think anywhere near this level.
Well, and in addition to, like, this Batman that we're going to meet is going to carry the guilt of having failed Superman in his mind. Then you couple it with, here's a guy who's going through the motions to put a team together because he feels like he owes it to Superman, who he let down. Then he's going to have to, in the Knightmare sequence, confront his greatest enemy and face up to the fact that he let his Robin down. Like, there's a lot of things that Ben Affleck's going to get to play with in this movie that none of us anticipated, and instead we got wind-up penguin jokes in the theatrical cut.
One misses the days when one's biggest concerns were exploding wind-up penguins.
It's a bad joke.
It's another reminder of how much we were just truly robbed from the emotional impact that can come with these characters if you take the time to build them up and develop them properly.
I agree. Okay, so let's broaden things out and just talk about more what we can expect from the entire Knightmare sequence. So let me see if I have this straight, and I probably don't. But is the idea basically that we think Batman and Joker, or Batman's gonna go to Joker, wherever Joker is, maybe Arkham Asylum, to try and recruit him to help him in this Knightmare timeline, and they're probably going to have some back and forth, which is where a lot of that new additional photography will come in. And then do you think we're going to see them team up with potentially Deathstroke and Mira to go do stuff, or do you think it's just going to be Batman and Joker?
Oh no, I think we're going to get the other characters that you mentioned, specifically Deathstroke, because we saw Joe Manganiello in
You said it right.
I did. Let's all celebrate. We saw him with the mohawk, with the white mohawk. And Amber Heard did talk about getting back to be part of the additional photography. So you're going to see them. I think you're absolutely going to see them as characters. How much they get to do is another question in particular. Like, that sort of speaks to how long the Knightmare sequence is. But yes, I think you're 100% right. I think it's going to be a recruitment, which is kind of funny now to say it out loud, since Justice League as a whole is a Batman recruiting a team story. And then inside the Knightmare, you've got Batman recruiting a team that he would never
That's
see
so
himself
interesting,
with.
though.
Right? I never thought about that.
Yeah, two kind of parallel journeys.
Yeah, exactly.
I need warriors.
But here's the part where I find it confusing, is that the Knightmare sequence that I think we're going to get into in Justice League feels like it should take place after the one that we saw in BVS. Because in BVS, Batman has the Joker card attached to his gun, and in the Knightmare sequence that we've seen in the trailer, at least for JL, the card sort of floats through. It's been decimated because the Hall of Justice has been destroyed. But then I don't understand, and maybe I'm taking it way too literally. Like, it felt like Batman died at the end of the BVS Knightmare. Like, it felt like Superman caved in his chest, but maybe that's just, like, maybe that's too literal.
Do you
of an
think
interpretation.
maybe the Justice League Knightmare sequence will give context to the BVS Knightmare sequence instead of, like, literally following that timeline of, like, this came before, this came after? And maybe it could take place in, like, two different time periods? Again, this all speaks to, like, well, how long is it? And when
it
does
also
it happen?
speaks to,
and how
like,
many
if it's
are there?
If it's a dream, all of that. But also, if it's a dream, it doesn't necessarily have to follow a linear narrative. Like, it could just be, again, Ben Affleck dropped into this post-apocalyptic nightmare where Superman is the larger threat and Batman needs as many allies as he can possibly get. And that's what it boils down to, I think, is that in that future, if you're looking at a future where Aquaman, Wonder Woman are gone, I believe Flash and Cyborg are still around, but Batman just needs allies. You know, he needs as many people as he can recruit, which forces him to sort of cross a line. And that's where I think Zack was talking about how much fun it's going to be to have Joker talk to Batman about, like, look at how far you've gone now. Like, Joker always tries to provoke Batman to cross his own line, you know, the line that he's drawn in the sand himself. And in the post-apocalyptic world, in order to defeat Superman, Batman's going to have to cross his own line multiple times.
I love this guy. He's so intense.
Which then speaks to the problem that many people had in the Knightmare sequence in BVS, which is that Batman uses a gun. Like, a lot.
I'm sorry. Again, I don't read comics, so I just didn't care about that. Like,
it's jarring. I'll tell you that much, it's jarring. Because the Batman who I know has a ton of gadgets, you know, and ways to sort of subdue other people. And even in the warehouse sequence, you know, he uses a lot of his jujitsu and a lot of his batarangs and things to take down people. But
do you think maybe that just speaks to how bad it is in this Nightmare timeline then, that he is using a gun?
Yes, absolutely. That he has to resort to any means possible. And I wouldn't be surprised if Zack, in a way to almost comment on the criticisms that he's getting, has Jared Leto saying, like, you're even out here using guns. You know, like, you're shooting people when you said you never would.
I hope he just gave Batman, like, 3 guns, or, like, bigger guns, just to be like, you guys.
Just massive guns. He looks like Rambo.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a lot of really interesting material that these actors are going to get a chance to play with.
Yes. And something else I want to touch on really quickly too, that Zack said in the Vanity Fair article is just that if he ever got to have a continuation of this story, he would have liked to explore what happened with Robin and Joker and Batman. And that got me really excited. And he said we probably won't see it, but I'm going to say you never know.
I'm going to say you never know also because Zack certainly knows what he's saying and he knows how it's going to get quoted and interpreted. And maybe that's the first hand grenade, thrown over the hill.
He said, oh, guys want to see this? Like, here's a little nugget of what you would see. I mean,
yeah.
I'm in.
But I also know when he was talking about saying that he was having a conversation with Jim Lee about if they're going to continue the story, that they might do it in graphic novel form. I think he did say, if I remember correctly, that there will be a reference in the Knightmare sequence of Joker will say kind of like what I did to Robin, or he'll reference Robin at some point. And then he envisioned a graphic novel that explored that whole how Robin died. And it would really fill in that gap. And I don't think he ever intended to film it. I think he just knows, he knows how it happened. It's probably different than how it happened in the comics. And maybe we'll get to see it in some
Sounds
form.
like a great limited series for HBO Max. Just saying.
That would be really interesting.
Just saying.
How dark would that be? People are clutching their pearls over an R-rated Justice League. If you do the death of Robin with Jared Leto's Joker and Ben Affleck's Batman, that
sounds like really good HBO content. I don't know what HBO Max's really brand is yet because it's everything, but old school HBO, that sounds right up their alley.
Yes. Make it happen. Please make it happen, HBO Max.
Please.
At this point, I do kind of hope Zack stops sharing things from the Knightmare. It was cool to see Batman from the back, and it's cool to see what Jared Leto's going to look like, but let's just wait now because we're really close to March 18th. Oh, don't laugh. Come on.
No, I was just going to say, if he wants to release it, I'll watch it.
Oh, yes, of course. A snippet of it would be great, and we would talk about it here on our series. You guys know that we're doing this on a weekly basis leading up to the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League on HBO Max. It comes out on March 18th, so make sure that you hit like and subscribe. Join us back here for next week's Justice League conversation, and we will see you guys then.